Well, hello everyone. Here to show you the contact experience allowance. It is a activity right here. You should see it's like for contact experience allowance, and basically it's like what talking about right here is like basically what it means. Of course, you say in the definition I'm explaining. Of course, is talking about it's like the act. The act. It's like a habit to where the numbers would just magically appear. The Mac to allow of allowing, and of course it's like my definition. It's money that will be paid to your pocket. It's like in the long run it is that knowing about the fact about for the allowance. And I remember that a lot of times is that whenever I would get paid allowance, especially on like the weekends, it is like about every Thursday or Friday it is that I remember get my allowance. And a lot of times it's like that I would go out and go to a shopping at like maybe a store, appliance store it is, and look around electronics. And I remember that a lot of times it was like something like a phone. It could have been like a video game or anything like that, maybe glow in the dark comic book, whatever it is. But anything that you think that you would spend your allowance money on that you would like to have. But basically it's talking about with right here is that whenever I was younger, that I remember that one of the very first phones that I used, of course, was one of these phones. And the thing about it is that the very first phone that you remember probably using would probably have been something like this. It's like where you dial the number. I think the only phone that I think that I have that would be like a good example, as you say, one of those old style type phones would be is like what you call is like something like analog, something that's related to say is analog. As you have right here is you got to rotate the phone dial right here. Just if you go from, if it starts from like 1, 2, and 3, you say if it's counterclockwise or vertical clockwise, whatever it is. But you have right here is like you got the toy phone. And a lot of times I would probably think about between a toy phone and of course a phone that uses actual service like Magic Jack, or it could be it's like cell phone, or maybe fax line, whatever it is, the wireless. If you had the wireless, say broadband, and then along with the carbine connector or anything like that knowing about. It's like you say the magic word more likely would be is allowance. Is knowing about the fact about it's like if you were to do the math like maybe every year, if it's once a year, or if it's maybe once a month, something like that. And with some companies that may say that less, if it's the word is less, it's like more likely that you could be paying less than what you usually pay for say for any type of let's say gadget such as a phone. And a lot of times is knowing about our experience about knowing about you go out and buy a phone. I remember that I bought a few phones. I bought a few calculators, and knowing about that I remember whenever I was young, of course, whenever I was a baby, it is that I remember the first I had quite a few toys. But this right here is me pushing my bubble lawnmower, it is. But anyway, we could probably think about is like the toy bubble lawnmower, toy phone. It's like knowing about if it has like what you call like a little play ringtone, it is. But other than that, you pick up the phone, and of course you got with these wires right here. It's like knowing about everything is just what you say just for play setup. It is. But other than that, but about with Magic Jack that I've used it, and knowing about the fact about that you go out and buy something at the store, and knowing about it's like if you're disappointed about it, or if you're satisfied with it. But on the other hand too, that this reminds me of a story that back nearly 25 years ago. Of course, this was when I was young, but knowing about really is that with technology is knowing about really that the type of technology that maybe you could maybe think about that could be what you say is on the market. Maybe the telephone companies would more likely be thinking about the next step, and say as far as technology goes, is knowing about, it's like if you were to spell your name, and then of course it's like put the, you say underline it. But if you were to put your name, and then that, it's like going by what you call is for like for the magic allowance experience. It is knowing about, it's like if you do like little artistic design right here, and then like with the word M, and like it's like if you want to draw like a shadow, that would be like what you call, it's like what you call magic. But other than that, is that this typical stuff that whenever you're young, that a lot of times you're probably thinking about that. Yeah, that the type of magic that you're probably thinking about is whenever it magically appears. But I tell you one thing, that after I get it's like the telephone bill, and then of course feel the bill, knowing about the fact about that. Yeah, that the allowance money that you make more likely is like knowing about is that the type of job that of course that I do, using these appliances, using these accessories, that knowing about is like if it gets done or not. And a lot of times is that the way I think about it is like as long as you're using it. And a lot of people probably think about whenever you're a young kid that knowing about, yeah, that I remember the teacher asked me a couple of times, what's your telephone number? And I'm like, I don't know. But other than that, and then I know she would have complained. I think once or twice that I finally memorized it, and then later on I told her I didn't know what it was. I think during that time it was the number had changed or something like that. But we ought to think about something that has not changed. Anything that has not changed other than with technology, that's like technology, of course, has come quite a long way. If this was like a speaker phone, and then along with a few buttons right here. But the only thing that really, I guess, has not really changed, more likely will be knowing about is that I guess is knowing about is like if you are going to that they make up your mind for knowing about, you see something in the store that you think that looks neat or something like that, it's like that changes color. But on the other hand too, that knowing about is that about the stuff that for what you can do, is knowing about if you were to do like what you call use the markers right here, is like a writing utensil. Draw a button right here. I'm not talking about a belly button, I'm talking about a type of button, a control, say a control that you can use. And knowing about is like really if the control should change, or if the control should be remain the same, as knowing about this is how much money that you'll be getting this week or this month for allowance. It is, you got right there is the knob, it's like for control, and then knowing about that it's changing colors due to the fact because that that knowing about that the tools and stuff like that. But you get, but other than that I would probably say to be honest, is I'm like a lot of things that you buy at the store, that a lot of times that you are pretty satisfied with the purchase. But on the other hand too, for what the directions say, is that they say that that this is free, or if that's free or whatever. I ought to know that knowing about the word for FREE is knowing about is that really that free for knowing about, it's like follow the routine for electronic emotion. It is. But other than that, knowing about what I would say is our contact experience, is knowing about if you really think you need it and if you're going to use it. But other than that, it's like for knowing about is like the fact that that we talked about it, and knowing about it's like for the next future, it's like a step. But other than that, is knowing about it's like for the contact allowance experience coloring.